Just give me one moment. Okay, guys, so full disclosure, I'm going to share with you. Well, first, Craig, just confirm for me that you can see my screen.
I can.
Okay, so full disclosure, I'll share with you what I shared with Craig on Friday was that I really, really struggled with this topic and whether I was or wasn't going to do this topic with you. Being one of 2 out of 17 on our team, I was like, oh God, it's going to be one of those received as, oh, here comes another one burning her bra, you know, and that's really not the intent of this presentation. Really what the foundation of this discussion is going to be is, you know, I think one of the greatest tools that we have in our tool belt as salespeople is empathy. And, you know, in my opinion, you know, as of late, we've talked a lot about diversity at Kasasa. It's a huge topic right now in the nation right now. A lot of conversations of, even in my own personal friendship circles, you know, I don't see color, I don't see gender, I don't see race, go down the line. But for me, I do see color, I do see race, I do see gender, but it's because it allows me to acknowledge their experiences, right? It allows me to acknowledge who they are as a human so that I can authentically connect with them. So in this particular instance, I'm encouraging you to, when you're having conversations, do see gender, but connect with them as a human, okay? So with that, I'm going to go ahead and just kind of to set the flow of the conversation. You know, why should you care about this, particularly in the banking industry? You know, how do women decide? Arguably, I believe you may, you know, connect some of this with maybe in your own personal relationships. Who knows? And then we'll close off with just a little bit of tips. So first off, this is one of my favorite shows in the whole wide world. I'm going to also preface this by saying I don't believe any of us do this, thank God, but it's just kind of funny because something tells me a long time ago, maybe some people did do this.
So show us how you'd normally sell to a female client.
Okay, with pleasure. Time to learn a few new tricks, old dog.
You got this, Shroot.
You've just walked into her office and begin.
Hello.
Hello.
May I please speak to your boss?
No, she is the boss.
I am.
Hi, I'm Mr. Hannon. How can I help you?
Okay, this isn't working for me because no one would ever believe that she would be a boss.
He's absolutely right. I'm really struggling. Oh, I'll be the buyer. Hello, Mr. Shroot. Nice to see you. Please have a seat.
I never sit down during sales meetings. I want to appear aggressive, imposing. I'm going to sell to you in 12 minutes.
No, actually, she'd like to take her time discussing her needs.
I will tell her what her needs are and then fill them. This is going to work out best for you if you just relax and do nothing. And once I'm finished, it's over.
Okay, let's stop here. Anyone have any thoughts?
I thought it went great.
I have written down a few questions. 1, have you ever killed a woman? How many women have you killed? Please, sir, will you not kill me?
Okay, so that's fantastic. Again, I don't believe you guys do that, but I will say I have experienced levels, maybe to this not to this extent, but I have experienced this just even in my own personal selling life. I'll give you the perfect example. My husband, Joe, and I, we just redid like a really bomb lighting package in front of our home. And we had a couple of companies come out. And I can tell you there was one company that did, it was just so ridiculous. Like first off, it was when I called, it was, you know, oh, should we wait for your husband to come? The second thing that they would say, like whenever they would call to follow up on the proposal, it was, oh, is Joe home? Should I call back later? Like this actually still happens. The funny thing is I was the one who was stroking the check. So I'll give you a guess as to whether we went with that company or not. And it doesn't matter who's striking the check, right? It's really just about, doing the right thing. So again, I don't think you guys are doing that, and it's much different in the banking industry. But the point here is that this stuff still happens, which is ridiculous to me. But if we switch over to the banking industry, I've done actually a lot of really some research on this, and it's really incredible because in the banking industry, there's still a lot of work to be done. It is still a male dominated field. I mean, guys, just look at our own internal sales organization. I'm one of two, and that's not Sean's team, but in my lens, I kind of consider them separate. One is inside outside, but regardless, there's still a lot of work to be done in the banking industry. However, there's some really powerful women out in the really top tier of banks. You can see Citigroup, their next CEO is a woman. We actually have a Chase, their CIO is a woman. So at these really top tier banks, there's some really smart, incredible women driving a lot of the banking industry. And so actually, I actually even looked at my own, some of our really large deals. And actually, the bank that I sold at the end of the year, Citizens Bank, which was just under $1 million, their CEO was a woman. And actually, Suncoast Credit Union, their executive team is actually dominated by women. So my position, and as I shared with Craig on Friday, is I think it's really important that we start taking a look at, what are the gender differences on how people make decisions. I mean, we do a lot of sales training on, personality styles, what's your type. All of that is very true, but there is a very distinct difference on how people decide. And I go back to, again, just look at your own personal relationships. Men are from Mars, women are from Venus. We fundamentally think differently. So I'm going to give you a little bit of insight into how women decide. And I'm as I go through these points, guys, I want you to just consider that these are more qualitative observations. I've done a lot of research. Actually, just a little tidbit about me. My education is actually in learning theory. So I spent a good amount of my educational career in just that. How do people learn? So this is more qualitative observations. But before I give you some perspective, I also am very interested in hearing your experiences and kind of what you think and how women decide. So I'm going to just call on Erin and say, Erin, what do you think?
I hope you realize that Haley is behind that wall. So
Haley, if you could just invite her in.
How women decide.
Yeah.
I think what women excel at where men don't necessarily is their emotional intelligence quotient and making decisions that not only are specifically logical, but what is the emotional impact and balancing both sides of the scale? What does it mean from that? Where I think men are a lot more linear in the what's logical, what's rigid, and we put things in a box. And what I see Haley doing really well when she does decision making is this whole encompassing circle of both sides of the brain, the left and the right.
Yeah, that's a really interesting observation. And it's actually one of the things that I noted. One of the things you'll note as I go through these guys is I'm using the terms tend to, because again, these are qualitative observations, and this is not necessarily all things. I shared with Craig on Friday, like one of my greatest friends is Drew Cranston. And he worked here, and he always used to tell me that I'm more like a guy than anything. So I'm using tend to, but again, a lot of this is par for the course. So women tend to really need to find value in your perspective before getting down to the agenda. Translated is they need to trust you. And we talk a lot like in discovery and things like that, but so often we're like, all right, let's get down to it. Well, a woman's they're blocked at this point. Like they really want to trust you. And I'm gonna give you some tips on how to do that. They also tend to want to take a more group effort towards decision making. Now, the good thing is that most of our process aligns with that approach, which is fantastic, but it's important for us as we do our questioning and our positioning that it's more, not, hey, Ryan, what do you think? It's, hey, how can I help everyone move forward through this process? And then to Aaron's point, this is very, very true. And Haley is a lucky woman, Aaron, for you recognizing that, because women, we think more holistically, and it goes across the board. I mean, from something as simple as, if I buy this new shirt, I'm going to need to get new pants, and then I'm going to need 2 shoes. You've probably experienced that with your daughters, Craig. It's holistic. When you fight with your spouse, Joe was late coming back from his golf game. Now that means that I'm going to have to make dinner, which means I'm going to be late to giving Joe a bath. And when he's sitting there just going, "Hun, I was late 10 minutes. Who cares?" It's more holistic. Now, if you translate that into in our decision-making process for deals, it's something like this is an example here. Kasas is going to solve my net income problem versus, yes, it's going to solve my net income problem, but it's also going to help me in marketing and this and this, that. They just look at a more broader approach. And we're actually seeing that a lot in our Suncoast deal right now, where their objective is member growth, but we're having whole conversations on how this is going to impact their service rep department. That's not something you would typically see. So with that, I'm going to just give you a few tips here. First, just building rapport. We talk a lot about that in sales, but I don't know about you, but sometimes when I walk into a male CEO, he doesn't really care about his kid. He cares about his kids, but he doesn't want to talk about his kids. He doesn't, he doesn't give. For women, they do. They really do. When I walk into a woman's office, I look at, her pictures. Does she have kids on her desk? Are there awards on the wall? Hey, what school are they doing? And we talk, we chit chat. I used this example the other day where it's every Suncoast meeting, we spend probably the good first 3 to 5 minutes just chit chatting. Mike Davis would kill me about that, right? Because he's always like, just get to it. Are you going to buy this shit or not? It's not going to work with women. They're not going to respond to that. They're actually immediately going to put up a wall, right? The other thing is body language. Again, I use personal relationships a lot, but how many times has your wife told you everything's fine? Everything's fine, hon. And then they just walk around and it's quiet and something's wrong, right? Body language is everything, just with everything. One of the things I notice a lot in terms of the differences with males and female is head nodding as you're talking. Typically, if a male is nodding their head, it's their signal to, all right, I got it, move on. With women, it's actually the exact opposite. It's their head nodding and they're wanting to delve more into it. So I would just encourage you to just, hey, Christina, I noticed, you're nodding your head. What's your perspective on it? What do you think about it? And get the conversation going. This one's actually really interesting because we talk a lot about CEO peer calls. Women don't really care about that. They're not really into the prestige, and prestige is probably too harsh of a word, but they're more concerned about who they're going to work with versus, who's my executive sponsor. They don't care. I want to know, again, holistic, right? They're thinking about that broader perspective. So if you're working with those female leaders, I would just encourage you to kind of make those type of internal connections with Kasasa. So this one I actually observed when I was at LSCU with Ryan. 2 weeks ago. So males, and I can't, all right, forgive me. I can't, usually I would demonstrate if we were in person, but okay, males tend to, when they're talking, this is all I have. They tend to stand next to each other when they're talking, right? They're usually like, Ryan, I noticed you were folding your arms and the guy next to you was folding your arms and you were standing next to each other having a full-blown conversation. And actually you were even doing it to me. You were standing next to me with your arms folded. Whereas women, we speak eye to eye. Now that's more so when you're standing, but again, think about that, finding a connection, we talk eye to eye. So I would just encourage you to do that when you're engaging with women. Now, I'm not saying sit directly across them and be creepy about it, but just observe, and I think you'll find the difference. Details really matter with women. Again, go think back to your, personal relationships. The small things always matter. And you're like, oh my God, what is her problem? Details matter with women. And one of the best ways is to get that come out is in conversation. One of the questions I always ask especially in big group meetings is I'll just say, hey, Alicia, I see your wheels are turning over there. What's going on in there? And just let her talk. Or like, hey, what's your reaction to that? What's your perspective on that? Just ask what's going on in there. Even ask your wife. Seriously, just if she's looking at you, hey, what's going on in there? What's happening? This one's actually something that I've observed a lot, especially with citizens, was women really like to discuss things out loud versus more on the male side, it's more of a quiet contemplation. For example, I'll use Pat from Miami Firefighters. It's, hey, I'm going to look at this and then I'm going to get back to you. Right. And I trust him on that. And Micah hates it. He's like, I haven't heard back, but I'll take the heat for that because I know that is what that's how Pat works fundamentally. Whereas women, we want to talk about it all. We want to look at every little option. We want to see A, B, C, D. We want to talk about it. So the only problem is I don't want them to do that by themselves. I want to be part of that. So I'll say, and again, we're doing this with Suncoast. We'll have a big meeting and then I'll call her, I'll shoot her a note like, hey, Karen, that was a really, some intense conversations. You want to sync up tomorrow and just talk through some of them? Cool. And then me and her will have a conversation one-on-one. So again, these are just some quick tips. Honestly, I can probably go on for a full hour of it, but these were just the ones that I've noticed over the past few weeks. And, really the foundation here is, empathy and just connection. That's really what it comes down to. So I'll just open it up to the floor and just kind of get your thoughts and if any of this kind of resonates with you.
As a girl dad, this is hugely helpful. And I'm not always the greatest listener and hearing them. I'm very prescriptive sometimes with my daughters. And I think that translates sometimes to how you do the sales process too, so this is good because we're going into an exec meeting with 2 female executives and this will be really helpful.
Cool.
The latter part of these tips, I see it in my relationship with Haley, but it's very blatantly obvious how accurate this is. So, because you're right. I think the biggest difference between Haley and I, and it's a male and female thing, is I'm very much the quiet contemplation. And there are times where I do like to push to get through the conversation, even though it might be difficult, have the conversation and instead of letting it stew and boil. But she likes to out loud go through every single option, and sometimes I just need to take that into account in the sales process and hold them accountable. Don't let them talk it out on their own behind the scenes, but pull them in to the conversation with myself. I'm curious for you, big on, which I believe rapport building is super important in general, but over the last year, as it's been incredibly remote and it's been this, what's worked well for you in the rapport building part of it? Because you can only see a little box, which is honestly part of why I do this here at home, is because it gets people to ask me questions, and then I can start dialogue and asking them some questions. It just subconsciously promotes conversation. What's worked well for you over the last year?
That's a really good question, and a good call out regarding, the environment. So a lot of times, some things I just fake. I know that sounds incredibly inauthentic, and I'm that's what I'm pushing right now, authenticity. But sometimes, like when we'll get started and I'll say, oh, I apologize if you hear anything in the background. My kids are home it's their homeschool today. How's things go? How is that going for you? Oh my God, it's such a disaster. But now again, I'm also in state, so I'm familiar with it. But sometimes I'll just fake little things like that. Do I do that all the time? No. But yeah. And sometimes it's not even about kids, it's just, oh gosh, God, I sure wish I was able to come on site today and meet you in person. This is so difficult, isn't this? Oh, I know. How is it,
Cool.
just little things.
A big takeaway for me here, Christina, is the point that you made about the head nodding. Because I'm digging in. There's a lot of this that, holy crap, completely agree. And as far as how different I feel like I process things from, to Steve's point, my wife or my daughters or others that I interact with. But that little takeaway, because I typically, if I see someone nodding, I'm like, okay, good, they got it, and I am moving on. As opposed to this will give me pause next time I see that happen.
And they
to
may
be able to ask,
no, but that's
and drill down. Sure,
they may.
Right. It's a great takeaway, though.
One thing I'll also just kind of bookend this with is these items here are not meant to say like, hey, women aren't decisive, or because like I'll always say I am the most decisive person. If I'm in the store and if I'm going to buy something and it's going to be, I make a decision very, very quick. But I guarantee you, if you ask me for my husband, I'm not buying from you. So it's, women can be very incredibly decisive, but it's just, it's again, with women, it's the little things and it translates everywhere.
Yeah. So
I appreciate you letting me stand on the soapbox, because I was very nervous about this topic. So I appreciate it to all you guys.
This was fantastic. This was very good. Any other feedback for Christina?
I'm just trying to go back through our time, a couple hours in the booth down in Orlando, thinking, oh crap, did I do anything else?
You were being judged the whole time, Ryan.
Yeah,
I didn't realize I was being watched for this KED talk,
Yeah, that was just something I noticed. But I'm very like most women, I'm very quiet, but I notice everything.
I love it. Well, thank you, Christina.
Thank you.
Thanks for sharing that. I'm going to turn our recording off. Hang on.